Jon Stewart is taking aim at some of the ridiculous coverage that news channels have been doing of Donald Trump's criminal trial in New York. So for the past few days, cable and local news have been laser focused on reporting every bit of minutia about the ongoing trial, and this is particularly the hush money trial. I know there's several of them, but the hush money trial is underway in New York, and Stewart is calling out the press in focusing on every minor irrelevant detail. So I'll give you some examples. So Stewart started the segment with some cable news hosts actually considering the idea that they should move away from the constant needless coverage of Trump, which I would tend to agree with. He agreed, saying, perhaps if we limit the coverage to the issues at hand and try not to create an all-encompassing spectacle of the most banal of details, perhaps that would help. And I agree with him, because what tends to happen, and I've seen this happen over and over again with stories or issues involving Donald Trump, when there's too much focus and when there's too much coverage on every little tiny irrelevant update, audiences and readers start to get fatigued. And then when something big happens, when something important for voters to know about happens, well, they're probably not paying attention anymore because they're fatigued from the story. Right, it's too much, it's too repetitive. So before I continue 100%. With more, you want to weigh in, Cenk?
Yeah, look, this is among the reasons why I love Jon Stewart. And number one, he points out something that's definitely true. Look, number two, in my case, along the lines of exactly what I was telling you guys last week. What are we talking about his farts in the court for? You guys, he didn't even get into that. He didn't get into the sleeping and stuff. But guys, if you cry wolf all the time, they're not gonna listen to you when the actual wolf comes. And to some degree, the mainstream media definitely did that in the first term. So then when the wolf actually came with a fake elector scheme to overthrow the government, a lot of people didn't believe mainstream media, right? So Stewart's almost always right, and goddamn hilarious. Like, I watched that segment and I laughed out loud so often. It was as good as it gets. Pausing here to deliver some honest truth, as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
So he also played a compilation video to give examples of what he's referring to. He talks about like useless media coverage of the trial. So it starts with CNN. You're looking at live pictures in New York City of Donald Trump's motorcade. By the way, that one drives me crazy, and it's been happening every day. Ooh, his motorcade.
I don't care about his motorcade. Who cares about his motorcade?
KTLA says it's about a 20-minute drive between Trump Tower and the court building. Wow.
Oh, wow.
WABC, Trump leaving Trump Tower down Fifth Avenue. WNYW, they're now making their way across town along 57th Street. They just crossed Park Avenue, making their way up towards Lexington Avenue. Fox News, he's heading down the FDR. You get the point, right?
You know, this is the equivalent of Trump's empty podium in 2016.
Yeah.
Remember CNN would show his empty podium for like half their coverage. Oh my God, Donald Trump's about to come. Donald Trump, it makes him seem like he's like a demigod. So it's actually counterproductive.
Well, also there's another element to this that I think is actually pretty destructive, which is these cases are already seen as politically motivated by at least half the country. And so when you see the media hyper focus on every minor irrelevant detail and make a spectacle out of these cases, I think it reinforces the notion that these are just politically motivated cases, when in reality, especially when it comes to me, the classified documents case and the election interference cases, the one in Atlanta and the federal case as well, those are super important. I don't see them I think the timing of the prosecution unfortunately ended up being politically motivated, but I believe Trump did the crimes, right, and should be prosecuted for them. But nonetheless, let's continue. After playing that compilation video, Stewart then comes in and says the following: seriously, are we going to follow this guy to court every effing day? Are you trying to make this OJ? It's not a chase, he's commuting. So the media's first attempt, the very first attempt on the first day of the trial at self-control, it failed. And then Stewart also highlighted some of the more ridiculous coverage seen on cable news since the trial started, including this. So CNN's Jake Tapper trying to analyze a courtroom sketch of Trump. Tapper dramatically stopping an interview with a guest to basically tell the audience about a very underwhelming still photo of Trump in the courtroom. There were also clips of journalists giving play-by-play reports of Trump's literal movements, like what he did with his lips and how he moved his neck. Guys.
Okay. I gotta say, look, I watched the whole thing, and we got copyright issues. Otherwise, we'd show it to you because it's so funny. You should go watch it. But they're talking about well, it looks like he has no eyeballs in this picture. Let's see if there's a reason for it. It's a sketch. And then they bring in the sketch artist. You're like, what are you doing, wasting people's time, right? And so she's like, they're like, why did you give him no eyeballs? She's like, I'm sorry, I was like 50 feet away, I couldn't see. Okay, yeah. And they're like hyping up a commute. A commute is literally the most boring thing in the world.
So there's actually, our producer Kate found some examples to give you guys so you can view for yourselves. So let's take a look at the video.
I want to go now, as promised, to Christine Cornell. She was in the courtroom today, the official sketch artist today.
He's always kind of startling because of his height. He really is a big guy. And also the kind of impassive mask that he wears.
I want to show one of your sketches today. We're going through some of them, but this one, it appears in this one that his eyes are closed. What was happening here?
My apologies, ma'am. I was sitting 50 feet away. I was having such a struggle to try and get those eyeballs in a decent way.
Yeah. David Pecker came into the courtroom. Donald Trump looked at him as he walked in, and he walked in between the defense table and the prosecution table and took the stand. And from that time, he was razor focused on Mr. Pecker, and indeed, you can see he's sitting up on almost on the edge of his seat.
Of his seat, yeah, if we could see over here.
Wow, he was hyper-focused on Mr. Pecker, though, we do know that.
I mean, it's just so embarrassing, guys. And it goes on and on about, oh, then he grabbed a pen, and then he wrote a note, and was he scowling or was he smiling? Who cares? Look, guys, later in the show, we're gonna tell you about how Facebook is spending $7.6 million to maybe undercut TikTok, and how private equity guys might be involved in the plan to force a sale of TikTok. My point is, there's so many amazing stories in the world, right? The only reason we're doing this one is because we want to give Jon Stewart credit for being back. This is the best of the Daily Show when they rip mainstream media, and there's a political point in ripping mainstream media. They're not giving you the real information that you need. Again, we talked about in the case of the Columbia protests, how they mislead, etc. And in this case, has anybody in mainstream media talked about the timing of these cases? Like, we've had honest conversations about, hey, look, here's the substance of the case. I think he's guilty. Why did they bring it 2.5 years into the Biden administration? But they've had none of those conversations.
No, because the assumption going in is he's guilty, so let's not waste any time discussing that. Or look, even if they believe he's guilty, which by the way, I also believe that, you should have conversations about how it could impact the election when these cases appear to half the country to be politically motivated, right? There are interesting substantive debates and conversations to be had about these cases. And by the way, explaining what the charges actually mean, because I think most Americans are under the assumption that when it comes to the hush money payments trial, Donald Trump is charged with the hush money payments, like he's guilty for the hush money payments, when in reality his charges have to do with falsified documents in order to cover up the hush money payments that were given to the various people involved.
I hear you, Anna, but did he or did he not pick up the pen?
Okay, but Cenk, to your question earlier, why is it that the mainstream press seems to have similar coverage? Why is it that they don't really deviate from one another in regard to the way they cover these trials? Well, there was an interesting revelation today. Politico is reporting that a group of anti-Trump legal pundits from various media outlets actually end up meeting weekly to discuss how they're covering it, which I think is a problem, okay? We're not talking about journalists from one media organization. We're talking about anti-Trump reporters across many different platforms, and they get together to kind of coordinate their reporting. I think that's a really bad idea. So among the common attendees, CNN's Jeffrey Toobin and Ellie Honig, Lincoln Project alum George Conway. I mean, he's not even a reporter. Okay, but anyway, MSNBC's Andrew Weissman, Barbara McQuaid, and Joyce White Vance, the Washington Post Jennifer Rubin, Harvard's Lawrence Tribe, and the Bulwark's Bill Kristol.
Yeah, actually a third of that list is neocons.
Yeah.
So that's also problematic. But apparently they're super welcome into the Democratic Party as long as they hate Trump. But this is not supposed to be the Democratic Party. This is supposed to be the press. Bill Kristol is definitely not neutral or objective. And so neither a lot of these people, but they're mixing in with so-called objective reporters and legal analysts.
Yeah, it's a problem.
And so guys, to give you, look, people get together, have meetings every once in a while, like have lunch or whatever, no problem, right? You're doing it regularly. The question is, are you coordinating talking points against Donald Trump? And George Conway being there is kind of a giveaway that maybe they are, because George Conway is just anti-Trump guy. That's it. That he has does nothing else but that, at least in the news, right? And then lastly, to give you a sense of how sometimes these things work, a little bit apples and oranges, but I think it'll help you understand. When I was an anchor on MSNBC, all the executive producers of all the shows would gather in the morning meeting to coordinate stories. And I asked my executive producer, I said, so we're not all doing the same stories and it's not overlapping and boring, right? And he's like, no. So that we're all doing the same stories and making sure we drive the point home. I'm like, no, we're supposed to be independent and do our own stories.
Oh,
and I don't give a damn what Chris Matthews or Joe Scarborough's doing.
What a sweet, sweet notion, Cenk.
Well,
very cute.
That's why I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.